Reviving the dead to fight once more, manipulating the souls against their will, and rewriting death itself. In the Naruto world, there is no jutsu more forbidden, more feared, and more devastating than the Edo Tensei. But where did this dark art really come from? How does it connect to ancient Buddhist and Shinto beliefs and the afterlife itself? And how did the Sage of Six Paths himself accidentally create the first version of Edo Tensei long before Tobirama Senju ever gave it a name? Welcome back to the Ninjutsu Handbook series over here on the Naruto Explained YouTube channel, where we take a deep dive into the most powerful techniques in Naruto, and in this case, one of the most broken forbidden jutsu in the series, by uncovering every secret of the Edo Tensei jutsu. So what exactly is Edo Tensei? It was first introduced during the Konoha Crush arc. The Edo Tensei, or Imperial World Reincarnation Jutsu, is a power that forcibly drags a soul back from the Pure Land and binds it to a living vessel made from sacrificial flesh. The soul, it is anchored to the world of the living inside a near invulnerable body that regenerates almost any damage. In essence, it is immortality, and it is at the cost of free will and of rest itself. In the Naruto universe, death is supposed to be final. The souls of the dead, they pass on to the Pure Land, a peaceful realm inspired heavily by Japanese Buddhist afterlife teachings. Edo Tensei, it rips them out of that peace. It puts them back into a cycle of suffering. In terms of who created Edo Tensei, the knee-jerk reaction is to say Tobirama, but as we'll touch on later, Hagoromo actually beat him to the punch. When Tobirama, the second Hokage, made this jutsu, it was brilliant, it was ruthless, and it was pragmatic. Tobirama created this jutsu as a trump card, a way to bolster the forces in times of desperate war. However, Tobirama himself recognized how dangerous Edo Tensei was, and he labeled it a kenjutsu, which is a forbidden jutsu. Later on, throughout the decades, users like Orochimaru and Kabuto, they would refine and they would weaponize Edo Tensei into something far more terrifying, raising entire armies of legendary shinobi, unkillable warriors, and fully unconscious, and in some cases conscious of their actions, yet they were bound by the control of the user. Now, in terms of requirements in order to use this jutsu, it's pretty straightforward. Mastering Edo Tensei is no easy task because you need the following things. You need a DNA sample from a deceased person you want to revive. So it can be blood, it can be flesh, or it can be mere hair follicles. Those are enough. It can even be scraps of their DNA. That's why Kabuto asked Obito, can I get Danzo's body because I can revive Shisui, because part of Shisui's DNA was in Danzo's eye socket. The same thing with Jiraiya. He just needed scrapes off of the chakra rods that Pain used to kill Jiraiya. You also need a living sacrifice, a real living body who will be consumed as a vessel. You also have to have the ability to bind the soul with extremely advanced chakra control and the sealing jutsu that is accompanied with this jutsu. Without all three, Edo Tensei simply fails. The dead, they stay dead as they should. This is because when you're calling souls back from the dead, the Pure Land in Naruto, you are placing them inside of another living body. It's basically the most immoral jutsu in the entire series. It is unethical because it is one of the closest things we have in the series where it has a human sacrifice being unwillingly used to give their life to suit the needs of another. When this is done, the chakra signature of the human sacrifice, it is literally erased. They don't exist anymore. During this time, the human sacrifice, it is still alive, even though there's another soul in control, which should make you view all those times that Edo Tensei was damaged in the war a lot differently. That was another person whose body was being destroyed and reformed, albeit Kabuto used a lot of zetsus, but we can also say that the shinobi that he had before that he showed off to Obito, those were unwilling users who were used to place the souls of the dead inside of them. Think of it like a parasite, if you will. Once the host dies, then the parasite dies too. When Edo Tensei is released, the host dies and the soul, it is sealed into the body and it returns to the Pure Land. In terms of strengths of Edo Tensei, there are a plethora of them. Edo Tensei has a staggering number of advantages. The summoned body regenerates instantly from almost any damage, even total destruction. The revived shinobi retain all their abilities from life, so their Kekkei Genkai, their hidden jutsu, their jutsu knowledge, and just their overall experience. The caster can also use a sealing jutsu to make the Edo Tensei obedient absolutely by stripping away their free will. This is often done with talismans. In short, it's like fielding an army of immortal gods who can never truly die unless they are properly sealed away, though there are some other ways which we'll get into in a moment. Those summoned with the Edo Tensei have the ability to regenerate, which is how Tobirama used them, often using Edo Tensei in a kamikaze-like fashion with exploding tags to kill their targets, possibly Uchiha, which is really cruel when you consider how deeply the Uchiha feel love, and Tobirama likely used Edo Tensei to fight other Uchiha during the Warring States era because Madara had knowledge of this jutsu. The other benefit is that Edo Tensei have a near limitless chakra reserve, but it is not infinite. We see as much a few times in Naruto's war arc with, say, the second Tsuchikage, his chakra being cut in half in Naruto chapter 553, and we see it again in the war arc where Minato is asked by Tobirama if he can use Flying Raijin after the God Tree is unsealed, and Minato says that he has used too much chakra, though what we do see is that it is strongly implied that the Edo Tensei, they recover their chakra a lot faster than normal, hence the assumption that it is infinite. The other benefit of Edo Tensei is that those who are reincarnated, they are immune to infinite Tsukiyomi. Another strength that you have is that this jutsu is one of the few jutsu in the Naruto world where if you kill the user, the jutsu remains in effect. This is why Itachi had to use a roundabout way to place Kabuto under Genjutsu to get the jutsu released, because only the caster can release the jutsu to return the soul back to the dead. Though this brings up the many weaknesses of Edo Tensei. Edo Tensei is not perfect. If the soul resists strongly enough, like when Hiruzen was fighting Hashirama and Tobirama, they can weaken the caster's control. Also, if the soul is summoned and they know the jutsu, they can break control altogether. Like we saw with Madara when Kabuto released Edo Tensei, and Madara quickly used the hand signs to stay on the battlefield to avoid being sent back to the Pure Land. Also, as we see with Itachi, jutsu like Kotomatsukami can be used to free the soul from the control of the user as well. The summoned soul must also still be available in the Pure Land. If the soul has already been reincarnated or completely passed on, Edo Tensei will not work. A classic example being is if it is in the belly of the Reaper Death God, it can't be used for the jutsu until the soul itself is first removed. The only true way to defeat Edo Tensei is to either seal the revived shinobi permanently or force the caster to release the summoning. Meaning, if you're fighting in Edo Tensei, you're either binding them together or you're gonna die trying. The other thing that is a weakness, and what probably came to your mind first, is that Edo Tensei, they're not at all full power when they are brought back alive. Tobirama's version of this jutsu, it didn't bring people back to full power, only a small bit of their original power. And Orochimaru, when he killed the third Hokage, his Edo Tensei, it was an improvement upon Tobirama's, but both Hashirama and Tobirama, they were not at full power during the Konoha Crush arc. Kabuto was almost able to bring back Edo Tensei at full power. It wasn't at 100%, but it was close enough to where at worst it was only 1 to 2 percentage points off, which by extension, Orochimaru, when he revived the 4 dead Hokage, he brought them back at near full power. This is because he gained the knowledge that Kabuto had when he made improvements to the jutsu. Another weakness to the jutsu is that while the user can fight while controlling the Edo Tensei, we do see that there are times when they're using large numbers. It is ideal for them to be isolated so they can better concentrate, like we see with Kabuto, but as he's fighting against Itachi and Sasuke, the other Edo Tensei were still doing their thing. One more weakness that is on a basic level is that the Edo Tensei souls, they retain their personality from their original lifetime, which makes this jutsu extremely cruel for obvious reasons. Like when we see Asuma fight against Team 10, but for the caster, it gives them an edge in battle since it creates a mental nerf for their enemy. Yet, as we saw, some Edo Tensei, they took advantage of this to let their targets know their weaknesses and when they were sneak attacking, like we saw with the second Mizukage, and even when Itachi is fighting against Killer Bee, he's telling him, I'm about to put you under Genjutsu. This can be overridden if the user completely erases the personality of the soul being summoned. This lets the user completely control their body. There are also ways to strengthen the binding of this jutsu too, like we see when Kabuto uses the chakra from Anko's curse mark, or Orochimaru using Hashirama cells in chapter 620. But there is another weakness. Those who have been reincarnated can reverse track their summoner, which is how Itachi, someone who wasn't a sensory ninja in real life, could still find Kabuto so easily because, as Itachi said, every jutsu has a weakness. One final set of weaknesses is that if a ninja is willing to use the Reaper Death Seal, they can trap the soul of an Edo Tensei in the Reaper to avoid having to wait for the user to release the jutsu, and you can also force the soul to leave the body against the will of the user if you can help the soul find peace. Basically, use Talk no Jutsu and whoever the caster is, they can't stop that soul from going back to the afterlife. Now, in terms of why Edo Tensei is so feared, in a world where it's built on sacrifice and honor, Edo Tensei is the ultimate violation. It disrespects the dead. It weaponizes heroes and loved ones against their own people. It creates a psychological warfare just as much as it does physical. Imagine seeing your teacher, your parent, your lover, your comrade raised from the grave, and they're forced to kill you with the same hands that once protected you. That's why it is forbidden. It's not just for power, but it's also because of cruelty. Now, this gets into what we see with Hagoromo. So, interestingly enough, the true origins of Edo Tensei, they date back much earlier, over 1,000 years ago, all the way back to the Sage of Six Paths time in Ridaku. According to Sasuke Retsuden, the Uchiha in the Heavenly Stardust, in that story, in that ancient land of Ridaku, Hagoromo once developed a resurrection technique designed to specifically revive dead animals for short periods of time. This is a primitive form of Edo Tensei, originally meant ideally to heal and study and learn from the creatures that had died unnaturally. It was not meant for war, but instead it was for wisdom. Over time, however, the Uchiha fearing Tobirama made his version, and as you know, it was used in the Fourth Great Ninja War. It was weaponized. Now, the Buddhism, Shintoism, and the symbolism of Edo Tensei in general is really deep here. So Edo Tensei is also tied very deeply into real-world Japanese spiritual beliefs, something that once you understand this, you should appreciate the jutsu even more. So in Buddhism, death is a part of the samsara cycle, the endless cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. Souls must pass on naturally to reach enlightenment. Interrupting that cycle is seen as being a grave sin, creating suffering for both the living and the dead. Edo Tensei embodies that violation, yanking the souls back, trapping them in false bodies that aren't their own, and preventing them from attaining true peace. In Shintoism, the belief is that the dead must journey to the Yomi, which is the land of the dead, a realm of darkness that is ruled by Izanami. Disturbing the dead is seen as deeply unnatural, polluting both the physical and spiritual world. In fact, Edo Tensei mirrors the myth of Izanami herself, who once returned from death in a monstrous and corrupted form, unable to truly live or die, by forcing souls into unclean vessels. Edo Tensei is essentially an act of spiritual defilement, and that's why it's so feared and reviled, even in the world of shinobi where you do anything to win. In conclusion, Edo Tensei is more than just a broken technique. It is a powerful warning. The line between life and death, it exists for a reason. When you cross that line, you not only challenge the laws of nature, you also risk losing your own humanity. That's gonna be it for today's Ninjutsu Handbook series. Obviously, if you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing, smash that like button, and clicking here on the left to check out more videos from the Ninjutsu Handbook. Click here up top for this video from my One Piece channel, or click over here on the right for this video from my Anime Explained channel where I talk about non-Naruto content.